a drink it. We are live, everybody.
We're live.
This is The Grind. And so what's The Grind about? The Grind is real life entrepreneurship. It's a conversation between entrepreneurs, wannabe entrepreneurs maybe, but people who have made, you know where I'm going with that. People who have made tough decisions in their life, who've stepped outside their comfort zone. So just a quick round robin on the table, just so everybody knows. Obviously, Graham Brown from Asia Tech Podcast sitting next to me. Mr. Aaron, how you doing?
Hi, my name's Aaron. Yes. Hi, Graham.
There you go. And Aaron's responsible for that monster bottle of wine. Can we maybe just be careful of the camera? Just reach across and get that wine bottle on camera. There you go.
I was stressed. That was
There you go. Have you seen such a thing? No, Aaron isn't actually tiny. That is a big bottle of wine. So thanks for that, Aaron.
Oh, yeah.
In the other corner, how you doing? This is your first one.
I know. I was waiting for the microphone.
So here's the thing with Neville. Neville does his own podcast.
Yeah.
And you've also sat in and engineered this podcast. Mm-hmm. However, you've never sat on somebody else's podcast.
No, this is the first time I've been in on somebody else's podcast actually speaking. And the reason for that...
First time you've been invited, more like.
And the reason for that is I've been waiting for these wonderful Shure SM7B.
Yeah.
That was the deal.
Seriously, though, before we sort of dive into tonight's conversation, your thoughts on these audio bad boys?
Yeah.
What do you think?
They're good. I like them. And I'm seriously thinking of putting my hand in my pocket and reaching down.
Paying me to use them.
Reaching down to get me one. But I do have a set of microphones of my own, so I'll see how that goes. But I tend to podcast from home.
Right.
I haven't built my own studio yet.
Yeah, well,
but
you're behind the
I
curve.
can dream.
What, do you think they're worth the money? $600?
Oh, definitely worth the money.
Yeah.
I mean, with what you're doing, definitely. You know, you've got to, keep ahead of the rest of us.
Now that everybody's podcasting.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's, here in Singapore, when I arrived 2 years ago, I walked around and said, oh, I'm looking at podcasting. And everyone, what's that? Yeah, I haven't got a clue. And then recently, people are saying, oh, yeah, I know podcasting, thinking about it. And I think that's down to you, Graham.
Is it? I can't take all the credit for this.
No, you can't take all the credit, but you can take some of it.
Okay, Thank you very much. Aaron, what do you think as an engineer? Thoughts on the Shure SM7Bs?
Oh, yeah, they sound really perfect. I mean, they really capture my high-pitched, whiny voice right there.
It's exactly the effect that I was looking for.
It's really nice. I'm not like a really like sound studio guy, so it is really interesting. Something I should probably look into it.
All right. Okay, so thumbs up on the mic. So let's test them out today. So the grind is all about entrepreneurship, and the struggle, the grind, and the glory. The struggle and the glory go hand in hand. So, Aaron, you were on a few weeks back when we did the last one. 3 weeks, 4 weeks back?
Yes.
Yeah, so we did that privately. We didn't share the grind publicly. We did a private beta, as they call it in the trade. And Neville, yourself, sir, you were on, but only as the audio engineer.
Yeah.
So you may have caught him sitting in the shadows.
Yeah.
Engineering. Just a glimpse of him sitting in there, just pressing the buttons.
Yeah. And I think you didn't point the camera at me, but you did take pictures of me after. So maybe your fans out there
will recognize you. Yeah, they'll recognize you. So, just to bring us up to speed, life in the world of startups and entrepreneurship. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about what we've been up to the last month. So, Aaron, you interestingly, last time you came, I can't remember if we talked about it too much in depth at the time, but it's an ongoing discussion, is that you're kind of at an interesting stage with your business.
Oh, yeah.
How have you sort of come along with those conversations? Where are you now?
The last time I spoke to you was about, I have a practice where I want to actually review, what I've been doing for the past years, right? So you have like a 5-year plan, 10-year plan every years is like a milestone where you should actually reflect upon your actions and your past history, I guess. So we are around for almost 5 years now. So the time has reached where we actually have to evaluate and review what we have done and what we have achieved so far.
And how was that process for you?
We did. There is some nice things, and of course, and then more bad than nice ones, unfortunately. But of course, it is actually going to progress. It will help move along in terms of entrepreneurship. It will help move along in terms of growth. Nationwide in for Singapore as well, especially because what happened is that the focus for this field is not exactly there. Yeah, so we want to bring in people to actually do more design or technology on hardware. My company actually does hardware, right? So we actually manufacture phones. For the MINDEF red zones, if you're from Singapore, you understand what that means. For overseas, right, we actually design custom-made phones, smartphones for security purposes. So secured, encrypted communications in terms of messaging, emails, of course, and as well as voice calls, which is actually missing from a piece of the puzzle. So you want to encrypt your call so you can be tapped by people who wants to listen in for your company, for your agency, or your whatever. So it is a combination of both. A lot of people assume that we are just a hardware company. So basically, what happens is that we only make stuff. We make stuff and then we try to sell them. They don't see the things that we actually do. When it comes down to a smartphone for us, right, it's actually both a combination of hardware as well as software. And in fact, it's actually more software since it's actually software-driven hardware. It's a little bit complicated. it's a little bit boring, I guess.
No, it's not boring. No, it was just the camera angles we're playing around with. Have you taken some tough decisions?
Well, yes. At first, of course, is why do you want to do this in Singapore, right? I mean, you can do it in places that's actually that's actually progressed a lot more further compared to Singapore, which actually
like where?
Well, there's of course like China. There's also like Russia, India. Then of course there's a Middle East, which is actually really hungry for people or companies that actually wants this type of companies in their country.
So wait, so are you thinking about relocating or just?
Well,
is that an option? I mean, you don't have to actually disclose everything here, but has that been a conversation that you've had?
It is something that we always consider. Like basically, we have to actually, like when we actually review ourselves, our progress, then basically we have to actually see our options, see what we actually done wrong, of course, and then reflect upon it. So yes, it has always been an option to actually relocate the company to somewhere else that actually has more focus to it, more focus towards this industry, of course.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's about security, it's about hardware, and it's of course about software security as well. So it's not just something like just base. It is very broad. It is actually a very big problem. It's not a small application where you actually just put in the phone and then it hopes that it runs, and then it does this whole entire ecological system, be a platform or some sort of other thing. For us, it's actually the creating a foundation for all this to be able to run in terms of but to safely run and protect our customers as well. So if you're holding our product, you feel safe from malicious viruses, trojans, backdoors, and stuff like that. So you have some sort of like protection.
All right, gotcha.
Yeah.
Good. Okay. Cool. Let's fire it over to Mr. Neville. How you doing, man?
I'm good.
Yeah, and so just to put this into context, can we call you an entrepreneur? Because we've had quite a lengthy discussion about this. Because you are a teacher of entrepreneurship in ways, aren't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. Would you? Because I think we've had many late night discussions where you and I have sat down and said, what is an entrepreneur? Aaron, I'd be interested to get your opinion on what makes an entrepreneur as well, what you think an entrepreneur is, because it's sort of a bit of a trendy word these days, isn't it? And I think we were entrepreneurs before people actually started talking about that. We were sort of, in the era when it was pre-startup. Yourself, Neville, what's the answer?
The answer to whether you're an entrepreneur or to whether I am.
You are.
Well,
do you consider yourself? Because,
I don't, personally, I don't like using the word too much. Right. What I find is that based on my experience, I lived in China for 14 and a half years. And that's how I got into this area of entrepreneurship. And what I found was that there were people that were calling themselves entrepreneurs simply because they were opening a business.
Yeah, in China.
In China. And I noticed that this is something I also see here in Singapore and in other countries as well. So I like to think of an entrepreneur as somebody that's taking a risk, that people around will be thinking, I think, you shouldn't really be doing that.
So what risks have you taken?
Actually going to China
on
a whim.
And not just in 2015 or whatever.
That was 2002.
Yeah. Did anybody actually go to China back then?
Well, when I went around and told my friends I'm going off to China, they looked at me and said, "Where? Why?"
Well, they know where China is. Come on.
Oh, well, no, really? You'd be surprised. Yeah. They knew it was out there somewhere, but they weren't really sure of what China was, because it was still coming out. It was still opening up to the rest of the world. And when I arrived there, I arrived without any expectations, luckily.
What was it like back in 2002? Because now, if you were to talk about China, everybody sees, especially in our world, in the startup world, China's very much at the forefront. It's very much a destination, isn't it? But back in 2002?
2002, I arrived in Beijing. It was cold. It was February. It was cold. It was grey. It was very, very, I would say, foggy. Yeah. And I really had no idea where I was. Now you turn on the TV, and it's not long before you hear a mention of China. At that point, I arrived, and it was just an email that had been sent to me: go to China, teach for a year. And I ended up staying 14
years.
Yeah.
Ain't that the case?
Yeah.
Wow.
And
so in your lexicon, that would qualify you as a risk taker and an entrepreneur?
Definitely a risk taker.
Yeah. But there's parallels between that and entrepreneurship, isn't there? I feel that entrepreneurship and living abroad are very similar in many ways. And I know we talked about this before, Aaron and I, is that, that whenever you live abroad, it's almost very similar, isn't it? When you sort of go and live in a different country, it's very similar to being an entrepreneur, in the sense that you're starting without rules, you're starting in a world outside your comfort zone, and you've just got to step outside your comfort zone and do it. There's no manual.
Yeah, the risk element is definitely there, but it's not a reckless risk.
Right.
There's a difference between taking reckless risks. I think entrepreneurs, they take calculated risks that are balanced and thought out. And the upside will always outweigh the downside. Mm-hmm. And I think that's important. That's what's separate, because you will find people taking reckless risks and they will fail very quickly. Entrepreneurs, I think, have to be able to evaluate risk and then take a risk where the upside will be positive. Oh, yeah. And it's not just about saying, oh, I'm a risk taker, therefore I'm an entrepreneur. It's about, I take calculated, balanced risks that are going to pay off in the end.
Yeah, like travel.
And
Aaron, just over to you, because just bring this into context. So we all three of us have lived abroad.
Yes.
From where we were born, right? Yourself, you were in Canada for a while, weren't you?
Yeah, I was in Canada for about 17 years.
So about 17 years.
Yeah.
So for a while,
Yeah, quite a while. Quite a while.
All right, so 17 years. And you were in China for 14 years.
Yeah, over 14
And you've
years.
lived in Singapore for how long?
It's over 2 years now.
Right, so you've lived abroad for 16 years?
Yeah.
All right, okay. And you've 17 years in Canada.
Yes.
And for myself, I came to Japan first in 1995, off and on. And I've lived abroad recently in 2012 when I sold the business, so 6 years outside. And it's a very small percentage of people have actually done this, have actually got off their arse and gone and lived abroad. I'm just curious about it, because I think it's really interesting, this parallel between that and entrepreneurship, you know, and what it is. And in a way, I think it's like a training for entrepreneurship. Don't you feel that? You know, it's like this can show you what it is to kind of live in this environment where there are no rules.
Well, I think that entrepreneurship is actually, first and foremost, actually depends on the person that's actually going to have that title, right? So what happens is that you have to actually reflect upon yourself. So for me, I believe in constant curiosity, right? So you have to actually have this hunger to know more stuff, to know more things, to understand how things works. So you don't know something, and then you go and try it out, and then basically you find out as much as you can. Yes, it is true. You have this the risk factor, like Neville actually said, was is calculated risk. But before the calculated risk comes in, there's always this idealization, this idea that I want to try it out. There's this sudden interest in it, and of course the risk itself is actually whether you want to actually try it, and then whether you will succeed or you won't. And that's the most important thing.
What did you think it did for you personally, living abroad in Canada? Because you were born in Singapore.
Yes, I was born in Singapore.
Right, so it's a very safe, prosperous society. So you could have just stayed here, but you went to Canada.
Yes.
What do you think it did for you personally?
Personally, for me, it actually opened up my horizons. Of course, it actually opened up my view of everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, because like in Singapore, you are given a set of knowledge. Unfortunately, the knowledge is actually with a physical boundary of roughly about 40 kilometer by 40 kilometer.
Right.
And of course, the rest is actually in books. At that time, there was no internet, so basically you can browse on the internet or Wikipedia. So everything is actually really hands-on, so it's actually visual. If not, you have to actually touchy and feely. You have to actually touch it and get your hands dirty and try it out. So going to Canada was actually something totally different, because what happens?
Yeah, so tell us about that. When you actually got to Canada and you talk about the touchy-feely and things that are different, did you experience culture shock?
Oh yeah.
Do you have any examples of that? Like tangible examples where you had culture shock? Because you always, when you go and live abroad, you can get these books like Culture Shock Japan or Culture Shock China, and they sort of prepare you for it. And then you actually go there and it's like, oh God, it's actually never like that. And what actually affects you is probably the things you expected the least. How about you for yourself?
Well, cultural shock, I don't know. I don't think I experienced it, but nostalgia shock, maybe, yes.
What's that?
You're used to a set of rules. You're used to a set of lifestyle back in your own country. So you like, for instance, example, there's chili sauce in Singapore.
Did they have that in Canada back then? So.
No, there's no such thing as chili sauce. You go down to like Canada, and then all of a sudden you go like, hey, you know what? They eat different stuff. They do different things. They have like they of course, like we said, we call it just simply lump it up as a culture, right?
Yeah. And how was that in China? Because it must have been a bit more hardcore. As I'm pouring Neville's drink, so give him a chance to just kind of get to the mic. In China, it must have been more hardcore, because Canada is probably more familiar, isn't it, for a Singaporean? But going from the UK, where you're from originally, to China, that must have been massive culture shock.
Yeah. I think what helped was I didn't have any expectations. But the big difference was that I didn't understand the language. I didn't understand Chinese. I went without any Chinese language skills at all. And when you do that, what you find is your perspectives, your anchor points are just completely gone.
Right.
But
did you have any actual tangible examples of shock which kind of still uprooted you a little bit?
Once I'd been, I think it was about how long had I been there? About 2 months.
Yeah.
Maybe a bit longer. And my apartment, the roof leaked.
Yeah.
And at that time, the people in charge, I'd go along to the office and I'd say, look, my roof is leaking. Can you do something about it? Oh, yeah, we'll do something about it when it stops raining.
Right, okay.
And I thought, okay. So it stopped
Thank you very
raining.
much. Yeah.
I think, right, something's going to be done about it. And the next time it rained, it leaked again.
Yeah. Did you do the sort of the, you know, what tends to be the case is this is how it's done in my country, or, you know, you start stamping your feet and talking about rights and stuff like that?
No, not in that way, but what it went on for a few weeks. And I was going down. You know, I could feel my emotions.
Yeah.
You know, when's this going to stop? When's this going to stop? And I remember I met one of the management, and I was having a chat with him, and he pulled me up on something. He said, you know, this hasn't happened, that hasn't happened, and I reacted. You know,
blew up.
you know, I said, well, you know, what do you expect? You know, you haven't done this, you haven't done that. And he turned and walked away.
Yeah.
He just turned and walked away. And I thought, oh, that's unexpected. And
It's a cultural difference.
yeah. And
He didn't fight you.
he just walked. And luckily, before when I arrived in China, I'd done an induction course, and they'd warned me about this.
Induction course.
Yeah, they warned me.
Yeah, right. You said you didn't come with any expectations. You were trained.
No, I was. No, that was after I arrived in China.
Yeah.
There was an induction course. Said, you know, what you're going to experience is going to be very different. You're not, you know, your points of reference, your normal points of reference, won't be there. And then it clicked. You know, I'm not in the UK anymore. I can't behave in the ways that I would expect to behave if I was. I can't say, look, this is how it's done in my country. This is how I want it to be done. You do it. Because in China, if direct confrontation happens, you walk away.
Game over.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I learned from
Well, it's
that.
an interesting experience, and I think that it challenges you, doesn't it? And I think that there are parallels between that and being an entrepreneur. And talking a little bit about that, I'll share my experience of culture shock in Japan. So I was in Japan in the 90s, and what they have in Japan, I don't know if it's a Pan-Asian thing, not necessarily, not so as strict as Japan, but in Japan, they don't eat in public, like, i.e. they don't eat walking. Whereas if you were to go to Canada or the UK, you see people walking with a Starbucks in their hand and stuffing like a sandwich in their mouth.
Yeah.
And you see a lot of that, and it's like, okay, that guy's just busy, right? He's just rushing to the station. He's obviously just finished work. But in Japan, nothing.
Yeah.
Right? And the only exception to the rule, apparently, and I've seen, is like you're allowed to eat an ice cream. You can eat an ice cream walking along the road, but nothing. I never see it. Very rarely I see somebody eating like a rice ball or something like that.
Can you eat in a car?
You can eat in a car, but it's quite rare. It's just like never in a public situation, right? And I had this weird culture shock, and I can only call it a culture shock because it's like, you know, my all those sort of, what did you call them? Just those anchors, all those pointers that you have, they were just completely dissolved. And I walked out of 7-Eleven, and there's a 7-Eleven everywhere in Japan. I walked out of 7-Eleven with a sandwich, and I was really hungry, and I was like on break. Right, I was on lunch break, and I thought, I can't wait until I get back to the office. I'm going to eat this. And I started eating it, walking along. And then for a few seconds, I had this real strange experience where I thought, actually, is it illegal to eat in public in Japan? And I thought about it, and I really didn't know the answer. I thought, actually, it might be, because you're going on the basis of your experience. You thought, actually, maybe it's illegal. Maybe I'm going to get into trouble. Maybe they're going to deport me for this, right? Yeah. I really didn't know. And it was strange because it was a bit of an out-of-body experience is all I can describe it. I was completely out of my comfort zone, and it completely challenged me. And I just can't, it's very hard to describe to somebody, but for me, that was like summoning up living in a different country, sometimes your what do you call those markers, those pointers, those anchors are so detached that, you know, you're removed from reality, that your whole sort of reality is shattered. And that was my sort of like experience of culture, and it sort of just challenged a lot of things in my head.
And then how did you sort of deal with that afterwards? Because that's a key point, because what can happen with some people is that they go on a downward spiral.
Right, yeah. They get negative.
Yeah, they get negative, and it or you think to yourself, okay, I'm not where I feel comfortable.
Yeah.
How do I adapt?
Right, so let me ask you that about, I mean, this is the thing about Singapore. I love Singapore. I love being here. I think it's a fantastic country. There are a lot of things that need to improve, but there is no utopia, right? So when people, there's a lot of expats here, and we hang around with a lot of expats as well. And, you know, that you see people in those sort of, those spirals, right? And I'm very conscious of it, and I try and sort of step outside of it. You know, people sort of bad mouth or complain about the host country, even though in some cases they may be right. It's sort of, you know, it's really important to kind of detach yourself from those people, because then you become part of that little circle, don't you?
Yeah.
Like people bitching about the mother country or bitching about the host country. And, you know, I suppose the way I want to bring this back to entrepreneurship is like, you know, how important it is to, you know, hang around with the right people, because entrepreneurship is really freaking hard, right? It's hard. It's every day is a grind.
Oh yeah.
So how do you deal with it? How do you make sure you don't go into spiral? How do you make sure that you hang around with people who are going to constantly, not the Pollyannas who are like, oh, everything's amazing, but how do you hang around with the people? How do you do that? What do you consciously do about that?
Well, I think for the entrepreneurs that I noted that were successful at that, they hung around with other entrepreneurs that were successful at that. It doesn't necessarily mean that they were successfully building their company.
Yeah.
They were successful at maintaining what they had. They were successful at keeping a positive, positive. And I think that for an entrepreneur, and that is very important. They have to, as an entrepreneur, you have to create that right balance that allows you to get through, as you say, the daily grind of things. You have to be able to pace yourself. You have to be able to understand what lifts you and what brings you down, and so exclude and push away those things that are going to bring you down. And
do you consciously do that?
I think you have to.
Are you sort of aware of it? What about yourself, Aaron? Are you consciously aware of that? Because especially in Singapore, it's like, I mean, entrepreneurs cool now, but there's still lots of options, aren't there?
There are people. It really depends. Again, like I said, entrepreneurs shouldn't be actually harping or bitching about the like for instance, if you are actually an expat in Singapore, I don't think you should be bitching about the host country.
No.
You should be actually focusing it on what you are complaining about as how do you call it, rules of the country. So you want to overcome it, but not breaking the rules of that country. So you have to work within the boundaries of what and use whatever tools that you can find that you can actually use at your disposal for each one. Going on a downward spiral, I mean, you can bitch on your own free time to your own closest friend. I mean, that's fine, but then it's not supposed to actually affect your main goal, your agenda. One of these things that I always tell people is that do not forget your true agenda. Do not forget about your main objective in life, your original intent. And this is very important. If you are here to actually start the business, you are here to actually perform well and show your expertise, then make sure that is the first and foremost thing that you do, right? Yeah. So why focus on something that actually...
Tell me about that true agenda. What do you mean?
Well, everybody actually, every company in Singapore or anywhere in the world actually has this. You started the company with an idea, and that idea was to actually be it solve a problem, be it to fulfill a need, to fulfill like a vacuum. So like for instance, if you're actually making luxury items, and make sure that you make the best of the luxury item. Why is it the best? And I'll focus on that. So you want to actually put your focus, the original intent on what you are actually creating or what you are actually trying to produce or what you're actually trying to give out as a service. This is the original intent, of course. For companies, right, they actually have something called mission statement.
Come on, the mission statements are bullshit. Come on.
Yeah, but
it's like, you know, because they usually say something like, I mean, I'm just like, you know, I'm ribbing you. It's like, you know, a mission statement will say something like, you know, we are here to empower the lives of, or we're going to enrich the lives of, you know, people who, whatever, you know, they have these sort of very trite mission statements. But you know, with do you have a mission statement as a company? Seriously?
Well, we want to, not exactly to actually. We want to provide you with what you need, and that is the mission statement for our company.
But did you write that down in your company literature and stuff like that?
Well, of course not. You know, we.
But is that your? Is that sort of like the? Is that your? Yes. Agenda, like you talked about having the real agenda. I wonder what it is. It's like what you do when you wake up in the morning, what that agenda is.
I want to make stuff, right? I want to make something that everybody actually enjoys using, everybody actually likes using. Right. And then of course, for this case, not only do you know, if you're actually working and then you're given a piece of working company equipment, right? You want most people's reaction will be like, oh, more work, you know, that type of reaction. For me, I don't believe in that. I believe that, you know what, if I'm going to actually make an office equipment, a company property to an employee, I want them to enjoy using it. I want them to actually want to use it, and then to actually help them accelerate their work, to make it make their work more efficient, so they don't have to put up as much effort, and then they of course actually get back as much results as possible.
Where have you had that recently? Where, you know, well, not recently, but in your history, where you've made something and you've seen that sort of response?
Well, our company product, of course, there's one.
But I mean, the actual stories of that. I mean, like I know you say you got a great product, but the actual stories of, you know, we made it, we gave it to this person, and that person was happy with it. Have you actually had those? Have you seen those? Because that must be for you. I mean, if somebody who says they want to make stuff and they want to, you know, see that kind of reaction on people's face, that's the human touch, isn't it, that you're looking for? That's the real agenda that gets you up in the morning.
Yes, we are very actually hands-on with our customers. Of course, we actually try to maintain a close relationship with them. We are not B2B. We are actually B2C. Sorry. So what happened is that each customers actually is an individual customer to us. So when they come up to us, we actually try to be as personal as possible. You know, give them the personal feeling that, you know, we are here to actually support you, to actually help you out. So yeah, we have a lot of customers actually that always goes up to me and go like, I don't trust any other brands in Singapore except yours, and we don't, you know, there's the other competitor guys, but you know what, I stopped touching anything they make or anything they actually sell. And I just only want to buy your stuff. So, yeah, you know. But so we do.
Is that what gets you up in the morning? The competition. I mean, I say that because I love it. I mean, there's somebody that I compete with in this space, and you know, when I first became a competitor of them, I was pretty pissed off. I got angry about it because there was some history there. But now I thank them for it, because that was exactly the kick up the arse that I needed. And I love I fucking love competition. Well, I'm extremely competitive, and that really drives me. The fact that if there's somebody there and I'm going to compete against them and I'm going to beat them, that just gets me up and out of bed in the morning and feel, I want to do this. You know?
Yeah, I think competition is a very important part of being an entrepreneur, because if you're an entrepreneur and you have a problem, or an issue, something that you feel is going to hold you back, you have to remember you're competing against somebody else. And by competing against somebody else, they're going to have exactly the same problem. And that competitive element is what should drive you through that issue, through that problem.
Do you consider yourself competitive?
Oh, I'm very competitive.
You play, I mean, just put this in, how long did you play volleyball?
Probably 25, 30 years. I don't know.
25. And
my retirement time was blurred.
And what level did you play volleyball?
National team.
National team,
yeah.
Right. Okay, so anybody that knows volleyball in the UK will know you.
Well, yeah. Well, up until I left.
Up until the 70s.
up until 2002.
Right.
And
You consider yourself competitive?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, as well, Aaron, you play games, right? You
I
love
do.
gaming.
Yeah.
When you play games, are you competitive?
Yes, I'm
To
very-
what sort of extent?
Yeah, well, everybody, especially so, like it is actually built into me. I want to win. I
Right.
must win. Yeah.
Can I just sort of put this into context? Because before we did this recording, and I was going to focus this back on you because I want your reaction, is that before we did this recording, we talked about World of Warcraft and your Razer mouse, right? And this is the funny thing is, like, my son's 12 and he loves Razer as a brand, but you were throwing this stuff out and you were saying it's because it doesn't give you the kind of response that you wanted on the game, and that's pretty like high level.
Yeah, I'm not trying to actually, I'm not trying to diss Razer products or whatever. It's probably maybe something about my equipment, maybe, I don't know, but it gives me some weird little quirks,
right?
And of course and then if you're really competitive in nature, then you're gonna go like, yeah, this is not acceptable. As an equipment, since I can afford it, you know what? I'm going to throw this out, and I'm gonna get something that doesn't give me this weird quirk.
Do you consider yourself like that competitive that you would, throw stuff out?
Oh yeah.
To just get an edge.
Yeah, well,
what does that do for you?
But I mean, replace it with something that I actually feel that is actually better, or that actually gives me a more competitive edge. Of course, yes.
Well, what do you, so in World of Warcraft, who are you competing against?
Well, not really competing against anything, anybody, right? Of course, you actually, the game is very complex. So first of all, you have the lore, which is actually the story behind the game, the story of the whole entire game, actually. And then then of course there's the competitive or the progression, where you actually compete in terms of the first in the realm to actually, down a boss. Or the first in the world. Is that the
bragging rights?
First in the world to actually down to
have
get
you done
that? Well,
yes,
actually, yes. Unfortunately, yes, I did. Yeah.
What did you do?
There's this back in the really long time ago. Actually, there was this part where you are supposed to complete the whole entire. Well, there's actually two. Actually, we got the two achievements. One was actually you're supposed to complete this whole entire raid in 15 minutes.
Right.
So we were the first in the.
Have you got like a team or something?
Yes, it's actually called a guild. So basically, you have a whole bunch of people, like-minded people that's actually formed the guild, and then you just you raid with them. You join. You go into dungeons with them, instances, or stuff like that. So at that time, what happened was that there was this. There was like a raid, which actually, you have to complete the raid in 15 minutes, and then of course, we managed to actually be the first in the server to actually complete it. So that's
a big deal, is it?
Yeah, well, it is if you are a gamer.
So let me ask you this: is when Neville talks about what he does in volleyball, in the same, do you see your what you do in the same context? Do you see yourself as some kind of like athlete, competitor in that sort of level? Do you see the parallels? Well,
for me, unfortunately, it's the games for me is actually more like an escape. It's like something that I do in my leisure time. Like in my free time. It's not like sports, like where you actually like in terms of a profession. So for me to actually comment, like, you're doing it, not only. I mean, we both are passionate about it, about the game that we play, but on the level is actually different. I'm not going to go become a professional gamer, right?
Why not?
Yeah. Well, first of all, it's a very difficult thing to do. Like, for instance, World of Warcraft, to actually become professional in it is actually very difficult. So, and then, but then when you actually say like something like, what was that? Fortnite, right?
Yeah.
Where it's actually, you get to actually be the solo, you can actually join a group, a team. And then it gives you more options, or like Dota, you can actually like you can actually form a team, and then basically you can compete, and the team members is actually manageable. You have like 5, maybe 7 if you actually add in the backups and the coach, maybe 8. But when you go to like World of Warcraft, where there is actually no, it isn't like that, right? So basically it's totally different. So it's like you have to form 25-man party to actually complete the raid. And then of course there's different levels.
Wait, so you say this is an escape, a distraction. How many hours would you put into this, do you think?
In the game?
Yeah.
Well, if you are actually going to be competitive at that time, it was ridiculous. It's, like if you want to be the first in the realm to actually complete it, to be the first one to complete it, then basically, you spend like 16 hours maybe. So I didn't sleep.
What do you mean 16 hours in what?
In a day.
A day.
A day. Yeah, it is a second job actually. If you play that game, it's actually a second job.
Well, wait, every day 16 hours?
Oh no, only on the they were actually still okay about it. Maybe 3 days a week.
3 days. Wow.
Maybe 4 or 5 if let's say they're really competitive and they like really want to actually speed things up.
Well, so here's the thing. I had on the show just this week, I had Robin Tan, who's from Cloud Zen. Cloud Zen do like streaming games, and he does. They build a platform for streaming games, but we were talking. He was saying he develops games, he publishes games, and he was saying that you can't publish games unless you're passionate about them. Right?
Oh, yeah.
You've got to be passionate if you're developing games. You've got to be playing them every day. And we talked about World of Warcraft, and we talked about StarCraft, for example, as another like real time suck. And I said to him, like, I love these games, I love playing them, but I play them, then I leave them because I know if I get into a game, it's all or nothing, and if it's all, it's 10,000 hours out of my life. And it's like I don't have that. It's like you're saying, 16 hours.
Yeah, 16 hours. Yeah.
16 hours a day. I've got to run a business. I've got to do this, and it's like I'll just be so into it.
But if you're passionate about games and you're getting involved, how does he run a business? Because he's got to be playing the game, or because I think.
You see that was when we were young. You can actually still do it when you actually had the free time to do so, right?
Yeah,
right?
Right.
Before
when you had
your
16
business.
hours a day, right?
Yeah, when you had 16 hours a day, maybe like 8 hours to actually do whatever you're supposed to do.
Right.
So yeah, you pretty much don't sleep. But now, of course, if you wanted to go like, you're going to spend 16 hours, I go like, I got better things to do.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not gonna
exactly. I don't have 16 hours. I'm sleeping for the 8 hours, 9 hours.
But you have to consider, like, for instance, example, if you're actually going to be like so obsessed in something that you actually enjoy to do, right? And then you put that effort and then into your business or into your work. So you expect a lot more different results, right? Compared to a regular.
So, I want to ask you all about this because you're both sort of passionate about different things, and obviously Aaron yourself, games, and Neville, sport as well. And you previously you obviously invested a lot of time in your life into this. Is that you have work and you have business? Are you happy with the fact that work and business are quite separate? Work and those sort of passions are quite separate, or do you ever sort of sit and think, I often think that wouldn't it be great if you like did one thing and that was the only thing you ever did? And the reason I say that is I remember hearing a story about this guy I went to college with. I went to college with this guy who was really into physics, and then he was into design, and then he was into modeling, like CAD, when it was sort of a thing back in the late 80s, right? And all he really was passionate about was aeroplanes. And he was like the aeroplane guy, and people took the piss out of him at school because he was really into aeroplanes. But that's all he did. So, for example, he would say, I'm talking about it in modern terms, but, back then the equivalent of, he said, it's Airbus or Boeing, and it's like the A380 versus the Boeing 737. And he would say, the Boeing 737 has 4 engines and the Airbus has like 2 engines. And he was like, it's like airplane guy. And everybody called him airplane guy, right? But he just loved it. He loved airplanes. And then he graduated college, and that was the last you ever saw of him. And some time ago, it must have been a couple of years ago, I looked on LinkedIn to see what he was doing for his job. And he owned an airplane design company.
Wow.
So, and I looked at his LinkedIn profile, his previous history. All he had ever done since he left college was design and work for aerospace companies. And I look at that and I think, wow.
I think that's what makes an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Somebody that is so focused on what they're doing that everyone around them that's saying, you're crazy, you shouldn't be doing that. Why don't you do something more realistic, something you can achieve? And they're just saying, well, look, and inside them, they know it works, and they're going to go against everyone around them that's saying, no, it's not going to work. Because entrepreneurs, they can see something that no one else can see. And because no one else can see it, they're always going to get that pushback.
Oh yeah.
From their family, from their friends. They're always going to say, maybe you should be more realistic. Maybe you should go and do this.
Yeah.
Maybe you should do that.
Yeah.
Because it's safer, because it's, you're gonna have a good career.
Oh yeah.
But an entrepreneur that is, like you're saying, he's into aeroplanes.
Yeah.
He knows that's what he wants to do. He knows it can work. He can feel that it can be done in a better way.
Yeah.
And that's, that is where somebody that's an entrepreneur, for me, rather than a business person, because a business person is thinking, I can make money out of this.
Yeah,
right,
exactly.
right. Whereas an entrepreneur is sort of prepared to take the arrows
Yeah.
to make it work.
Yeah.
Right? They don't give a shit. They're
Yeah.
just going to do it because they care about it,
And they're
not
going to do
because
it
they're going to
better.
make money out of it.
And they're going to do it better.
It's I mean, a lot of people can actually become businessmen, right? To make
Yeah.
money, so you just buy low, sell high, and then that's a trader right there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, and it makes tremendous money, and like huge sums. But what happens is when you actually are passionate about something, then it's actually totally different. The passion and the focus is very clear when you're actually passionate about something that you want to do, and you only want to do that, right? So what happens is it teeters on a little bit on people who say it's obsessed and crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's almost on that level actually. So yeah, I mean, whether it will work out or not, that really depends on, I guess, destiny, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So my thing is like, you're right. I completely agree with you. And I often look at Airplane Guy and I wonder, like, with myself, is that, wouldn't it be great if that was all sort of one thing? Do you think it's like too much to ask when you look at, for example, what you do, to have like your passions and your work and how you get paid and all of that the same thing? Or do you think that's too much to ask? I mean, how do you look at it?
No. I mean, it depends on your person, right? Like what you, it's a give and take thing. So basically, what you actually believe in as a pro and a con. So everybody actually makes decisions based on the value of a pro and a con, right? Item A, item B, and then then they assign a value based on their beliefs. So the passion itself is actually it's actually very different. So when you believe in it, it becomes like a calling. So basically, you want to actually achieve it.
Right.
It doesn't matter whether it fails or not, because you have this blind conviction, this faith in it. So you just have to actually work on it.
Right. But isn't that you talked about the real agenda, that passion?
Yes, exactly. That is.
You said you're really passionate about making stuff.
Yes.
Yeah, and then now you're still making stuff, and maybe, I guess my point is that I go back to Airplane Guy as a great example of, like, for me, it's like, the dream is like, do what you love and get paid for what you love, because it adds value to people and so on. But in a way, maybe that's just kind of everything lined up and it all worked out. But however, maybe that's too much of an extreme dream to chase. What you can say is, look, well, this guy, he really just loves making things. And if you love making things, then, find a job where you can get paid for making things. It might not be aeroplanes, but, maybe you're teaching people about physics, or maybe you are, do you know what I mean? It's like, it's not necessarily getting stuck on the actual product itself. That's maybe too extreme.
The number of choices actually is based on his own understanding, right? So basically, if the physics person actually doesn't work for like aerospace companies, right? He would probably like teach aerospace.
Right. Okay. There you go.
If somebody actually, if there's actually a need or like a opportunity for it. So basically, he might actually fill the void of actually making planes, from designing and making planes into teaching people how to make it. So it is a substitute. Yeah, there's a lot of options. But then what happened is he might not have thought of it at that time.
But you see, this for me is where the entrepreneur starts to take over. The entrepreneur is thinking, how can I do it better?
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
How can I take that risk, that calculated risk, to do it better than what's happened before? And this is, because we can all work for a company, we can all work as an employee, but in order to say, okay, right, this is the way they're doing it now, but I want to do it better.
Yes.
And the only way to really do it to better is to do it for yourself, or do it in the way that you control, and then attract people that are attracted to what you want to do.
Well, then it comes down to the word entrepreneur, right? Are you a businessman first and foremost, or are you a visionary first and foremost, right? So you have to make a balance out of it. And
can't we class them all as entrepreneurs?
Well, you can. I mean, that would just basically make every businessman
right. Well, why not? Right? Why not? Yeah. I mean, maybe. Oh, okay. What does it actually mean?
Well,
I mean, the entrepreneur from the French is what, to take between or something like that.
Enterprising person.
Yeah, but okay. Maybe we're getting too lost in the etymology, but I guess in the common context is like when we talk about entrepreneurs, often it's done in the context of startups, right? And especially in our world and what we do here. And, these are people who start businesses often that don't have any established, revenue streams. They go out there, they take a risk, they build a business, and a small percentage of them are successful, right?
Yeah, but that percentage can be increased based on their knowledge, based on their experience, based on the way they take risks. Because this is what I'm saying. If somebody recklessly goes out there and says, right, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to start this.
Right.
And it fails after a month. Are they an entrepreneur? While somebody that says, oh, I'm going to start this. I know it's going to take me 2 years to get it up and running. Yeah. It's I'm going to have some setbacks. But in those setbacks, I will solve those problems. Are they an entrepreneur? Or are they both entrepreneurs? The reckless versus the one that's balancing it out.
So... here's the thing, and I want to bring this full circle because we talked about traveling and living abroad, and how do you teach entrepreneurship? So this is something that's interesting to me because there are now obviously stand up to be counted, right? Okay, so how do you teach entrepreneurship? And so my son's 12 years old, right, and at some point he's going to go into the working world, right? At age 18, or even if not before, he's going to be thinking about university, right? And if he says to me, if he turns around and says, "Hey, Dad, look, I don't want to go to university," I'll say, "Great. Well, here's, that saved me a lot of money off the bat, right?" So I'll say, if he wants to become a doctor, maybe, then he has to go to university. There's no option. You can't sort of like, you can't do that the lean startup method, right? But then if he says that, I'll say to him, right, okay, right, here you go. Here's half the money that I would have given you to go to university. What I want you to do is take half the money. So I'll pocket half the money. So already it's win-win. Here's the other half of the money. Go and start a business. Go and travel the world, and just get out of my face, right? And go and do that for a year, right? And that's kind of hard being an only son as well, to tell your son to go and travel or whatever. But I think for him, that's how I can teach him, whether or not that's entrepreneurship or just generally risk-taking for life skills, to go and travel the world, go and see stuff, go and expand your horizons, go and hang out with people who aren't bitching about the host country, and people who are traveling and positive and doing stuff and building stuff, and just experiment. For me, that's how you teach entrepreneurship. That for me is the only way, because until you spend your money, take risk with your reputation, and experience failure, you can't understand what it is to be an entrepreneur. You can't teach that. That's what I'm going to put out there. I know it's a little bit controversial in the context of the fact that we have somebody teaching entrepreneurship over here, but I just don't think you can teach this stuff, right?
And surprisingly, I agree with you.
I believe
and the reason I agree with you is because you can't actually teach somebody to be an entrepreneur. All
Right.
you can do is tell them,
Right.
these are the characteristics that you need in order to be an entrepreneur. You need to be able to take balanced risk.
Right.
You can't teach somebody.
But you can teach them to take balanced risk, but does that then empower them to actually go and do it?
No, it's a combination of things.
Right.
It's not just one thing. So they then have to say to themselves, okay, what am I going to do? Am I going to ignore this advice, or am I going to take it on board? And once they take it on board, then they have to move on to the next step. So it's taking steps into being that type of person that people can look at and say.
Really? But you can take steps, but you have to take the plunge.
Yeah, but that's it.
Wait, okay, so let's put it in the context. You speak how many languages? You speak Mandarin?
Yeah, well, I'm forgetting it because I'm in Singapore, but
you can speak Mandarin, so you've learned Mandarin.
Yeah, and read a certain amount. Yeah.
Yourself, Aaron, do you speak any other languages?
Well, I speak the usual languages that a Chinese guy in Singapore
Right,
does.
right.
Yeah, so English, Chinese, and of course the dialects. I do know a little bit of French, I guess, because
Okay, from
Canada
being
is
Canada?
bilingual.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so I mean, I think there's parallels as well with like learning a language and being an entrepreneur, is that you can read it from a book, or you can go out and you can just speak.
Yeah. And living in China, I mean, I went to China, I had no Chinese, and it took, after my first year when I realized I was going to stay in China, then I started learning Chinese.
Right.
And
But
I
to the point about, you say you can equip people with all this knowledge.
No, it's not knowledge, it's attitude.
Yes.
Okay.
It's an attitude that says, because in the same reason I met people that had lived in China for over 20 years and they couldn't speak Chinese. Why? Because their attitude was, I don't want to learn Chinese. I can get by without it. But then it meant that somebody had to hold their hand when they wanted to.
It's a waste, isn't it?
Yeah. Whereas, learning a bit every day, it takes time. You have to allocate that time. You have to put the effort in. But it's an attitude. It's a frame of mind. And that's what you have to get across to somebody that wants to be an entrepreneur, that says, if I want to be an entrepreneur, I have to be willing to solve problems.
Yeah.
If you're not the kind of person that wants to solve problems, you can't be an entrepreneur. You're the kind of person that wants to be told how to solve the problem. You're the kind of person that wants to be given a task, and then then you work through that task, and then you go home, and that's the difference. And so, if you want to be taught entrepreneurship, I don't think you can. All you can do is to follow the practices that allow you to be entrepreneurial.
Yeah.
And then, with a bit of luck, you can, if you find a gap, something that is needed, if you find something that people want, you need somebody to buy what you want. You need to be able to make or create what they want, and then you need to be able to solve the problems that come up in producing that thing.
Right.
And if you can't do that, you can't be an entrepreneur.
Graham, I actually have this question I want to ask you.
Please.
Okay, so this is the question. I mean, he's teaching, Neville is actually teaching entrepreneurship, right?
No, I'm teaching creative industries entrepreneurship.
Okay, creative interest entrepreneurship.
Which is to allow people with the right give people what they need to have in their frame of mind.
Yes.
I can't tell somebody, okay, if you do this, and this, you will now be an entrepreneur.
Yes,
that's what I feel.
Of course not.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can't do that. Of course,
Yeah.
there's no sure way thing. So I'm going to ask you this question over here. I'm going to ask Graham this question here, which is actually interesting. What do you believe? Do you believe that, say for instance, a successful entrepreneur, a successful businessman, actually taking up a mentorship role, a mentor? He's actually now a mentor, and then he's going to teach another guy or girl, of course, another businessman or future businessman, or current entrepreneur to be, how to actually create a successful business. Do you believe that he can be taught into actually, it's the same thing. I mean, it's your mentor
Right.
is actually a teacher, so he's going to teach you how to actually become to create a successful business. So I mean, in that way, is it possible?
Is it possible, like through mentoring?
Yes.
That's a really good question.
Yeah.
Let me think about it. So I think it is. However, I think so. How does it work? So I think we as entrepreneurs learn through, or I speak from experience, maybe for myself, through role models. So when you learn about great entrepreneurs, so you probably have, a handful of entrepreneurs that you admire personally, and, we all do, right? For their different reasons.
Mm-hmm.
And I think their stories are quite powerful and they've had an impression upon us, right? So maybe you are a fan of Elon Musk, or maybe you're a fan of Richard Branson or Tony Fernandez or whoever it may be.
Oh, yeah.
So these have an impression upon us for whatever reason. Maybe they struggled as a kid, or maybe, you know, they were amazing in terms of their philosophy.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they gave back to society and so on. So I think the role model, the story is the most powerful part of that teaching. And therefore, as a mentor, that's kind of what you impart. And I think, you know, if we go back to Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Robert Kiyosaki, you know, just wondering, you guys read that, Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad, Poor Dad?
No.
No, you haven't. Okay. Have you read that?
Not exactly.
No, okay, so Rich Dad Poor Dad was an interesting book, and it had a lasting impression upon me, and I think a lot of people in business have sort of come across it or are aware of it, right? So Rich Dad Poor Dad, Robert Kiyosaki, was basically, Robert Kiyosaki told a story, and it's an apocryphal tale, so it's not totally true, but it basically was the story about him growing up and him having his rich dad and his poor dad, right? And his poor dad was like his real biological dad, who was like a university lecturer, which was actually the truth, right? That was actually the case. And his real dad was classic, middle class, old school, you know, get professional qualifications, work really hard, job for life, all that sort of stuff. Don't take a risk. And then, but he was poor. Even though he had a good wage as a university lecturer, he was poor. Effectively, he never had enough money to sort of say, screw this, I'm going to go and travel the world for 6 months. His rich dad, however, was his friend's dad, and his friend's dad didn't go to university and instead spent his time investing in real estate in Hawaii. And his poor dad was his rich dad was a hustler. And so you asked me, Aaron, about mentorship, and his rich dad was effectively a mentor to him. And he said, hey, you know, like, you know, Robert, you know, here are the life lessons I'm going to impart on you. And his life lessons was just about, look at what I've done, look at how I think, look at how I behave. And like, you know, that is the model that you need to have. Whereas, you know, if you copy what your dad did, you're going to end up in the same situation, right? So to the point about, can you teach that? Then I think yes, through story.
But that is like I'm sorry to cut you
no,
short.
No, go for it.
Yeah, but this is the catch. Days you see, like okay, if I'm a father, right, and then my son, I'm in real estate,
yeah,
and then my son actually goes like, yeah, you know what, you should actually follow me. Look at me, I'm so successful. So I mean, there is a certain amount of vested interest, the amount of hours that he's actually going to mentor or guide, even as a guidance, right? He's going to be there 24/7, right? But then when you actually say mentor relationship in Singapore or any other country, you're saying like maybe this guy is actually going to like spend maybe 5 hours a week. Just
It's different,
like,
right?
Yeah, it's totally different. So I mean,
the mentor relationship has, in my view, has to be led by the mentee.
Yes,
the mentee has to say, "What do I want?"
Yes,
absolutely right,
and then they go to the mentor and they ask the question, "Okay, this is what I want.
yeah.
Can you tell me? Give me some advice as to how I can get it."
Right.
And if it's about sort of the mentor teaching and educating, I think that doesn't work, because the mentor saying you need to do what I'm doing, but times have changed.
Yes, times
have changed. All the mentor can do is say, look, this is how I did it then. This was my attitude. This was my mindset.
Yes,
and you now have to
figure it out.
Figure it out.
Yeah.
And look at what is happening around you. And then work it out, and then see, and then come back to me and say, if something's working, carry on. But if something's not working, then I'll make a few more suggestions. So 5 hours a week is, in my opinion, more than enough, because it's up to the work has to be done by the mentee.
Then it comes down to ask and you shall receive, and if you don't seek, then you don't find.
Yeah.
So do you have a mentor?
Well, I wouldn't call them mentors. I would probably call them like advisors and friends, close friends, of course. So if I actually bump into a situation that I do not understand or require more brain power, people to actually help me consider about it, then I will ask them and then go like, hey, look, I'm in this situation.
Right.
I bump into this happen. This.
Is that a structured relationship? Do you like sit down for an hour a week or what?
Oh no! It's like basically it's like as and when I'm free, and when I actually bump into a question mark, and then of course they are free, and then basically I go like, hey, you know what? Could you advise me on this, right? Could you actually tell me if this is to happen on you? Can we actually sit down? Could we actually spend 15 minutes and analyze how we can actually solve this, right?
And why do you sit with them? What is it about them that do they have a background in design, engineering, or something that you?
No. Well, it's not about design. I'm fine with the design and the engineering part. So I mean, if the specifications actually meld together, then it usually tends to work very well. But the when it comes down to something more random, something that actually more less statistical, less mathematical or logical, and then for instance a situation, then basically yes, I need help.
What situation?
Be it like an incident that actually happened, or when you actually receive a letter of notice from or intent from another lawyer or something. And a situation that you actually have never actually encountered before. So basically, you need advice, somebody that actually has more experience in it, of course. And of course, in that term, then not only is they at that time, then they will be a mentor, but of course But you can call on them as and when you need it, and there's no time frame. You can actually sit down over a barbecue or whatever. So
that's a good relationship, though, isn't it? I always wondered how you get that. And Neville, do you have a mentor now?
I don't have a mentor, but what I do is I look at examples of people around me,
right?
And my position with the podcast, I can ask questions. So
sure.
The podcast allows me to ask questions and look at what people are doing, and then I can follow on and see how they're doing it. And sometimes it shows in complex solutions. Sometimes entrepreneurs will produce complex solutions to simple problems. And what I've learned is if there's a simple solution, and this is from some of the people I've interviewed and spoken with, use that. Because you're conserving energy. You're not wasting resources. And that's usually the best.
It's a great reason to do a podcast as well. It's like self-mentoring, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I found that is that we're going back to that point about who you surround yourself with. If you do a podcast, you surround yourself with good people. I mean, even in this context, sitting here with you guys talking about this stuff, in a way, it's like talking about business challenges, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's like self-mentoring as well. It's mentoring in the sense you have a mastermind. You can talk about these challenges. But you've also, interestingly, in sport, if you competed at national level, you must have had a mentor. You must have had a coach of some sort, right? How did that work?
The coach that I really admired was somebody that broke the rules. Somebody that didn't follow sort of the conventional way of doing it. And it, in my opinion, it caused them problems because it wasn't the way it was done. But that coach created a group of players that were exceptional. And they were able to, and still
but
now.
How did they get that out of you as a performer? So, obviously, whether you're an entrepreneur or you're an athlete, how did they get it out of you? Did they actually say, hey, look, Neville, this is how you do a pass, this is how you do whatever? Or was it by modeling their behavior and that just sort of become implanted in your head?
I think when you have a sort of a leader, or the group around them follows that, and it attracts that kind of personality that's willing to break the rules, willing to follow that example. And maybe other types of personality will follow other more conventional. So it's sort of a self-perpetuating environment where you get a group of crazy unconformist people coming together to create something that everyone else is looking at and saying that's just wrong.
Did that sort of did having those people around you push you as well? Like, look at them and think, oh, kind of, I've got a bit of like positive competition.
It pushed you. It's positive competition. It's camaraderie. It's also understanding that we're different. Different personalities come together, and they click.
Yeah.
And I think that's another thing, that when people go and get a job and they sit in front of a manager and the manager interviews them, the manager's looking for somebody like them and to fill a vacancy that they understand. Whereas when a real entrepreneur is looking for somebody that's going to do something different, that's going to take the lead, do something that's going to break the status quo. And I think that's something that's very important. And entrepreneurs need to understand that I'm not recreating the job that I did.
Right.
I am looking for somebody that's going to do it in a new way that is going to surpass what's happened before.
Right. So I guess this is kind of the point of the discussion tonight, is that can you teach that? Because what I want to know is that, I think back to myself. If I go back to my 20s, I wasn't an entrepreneur in that sense, right? I was very much a rule breaker and a troubled child in that sense. And I was like, I was smart, but I wasn't an A student, right? Because I learned that, I could commit all my resources and time to becoming an A student and get an A. But that was it. That's all I ever did, was become an A student. Or maybe I've become a B plus, but that sort of time that you saved, you could maybe invest in going and smoking cigarettes down the seafront with your mates, right? So I learned that. And so I was a bit of a rule breaker and got into trouble and so on. But I was never an entrepreneur, because I never was surrounded by these people who sort of taught me entrepreneurship and showed me, like, I never had a role model where I thought, like Uncle Jack or whatever, he did this, he had a startup, and therefore I thought, that's an option for me. I never had all those options. In my sort of world, the only people who were self-employed or entrepreneurs were plumbers, electricians. That was it. And then people who had jobs. I never had this as an option. So I wonder, I think about this when I recruit people here, is that, you're talking about managers looking for people like themselves. I'm looking for entrepreneurs very much. It's like, maybe, is that too much when you have a 20-year-old sitting in front of you and recruiting, you're looking for an entrepreneur? You're like, do they get it? Do they hustle? Do they, think the same way? Do they come out with the same sort of ideas that I come out with? Or is it just too early? I'm just curious what you guys think about that.
Well, the question is like this, okay, if it's like, like for success, right, tested and proven, and then it is actually proven to be successful, then basically why not? Now, what happens is when it comes down to the other opposite end, right, and it goes like tested and proven to fail. So are you going to use the same method over and over again with slight modification or slight irradiation of it, and then basically go like, yeah, it's going to succeed. The next try is going to succeed. So it comes back down to the same question. So why not try something different, totally different from scratch? So the person that actually thinks different might be the one that actually goes like, hey, you know what? He created a business that go like, hey, you know what? I could have done that, but why didn't I think of that? Usually it's that case. I could have done that. I have the knowledge for that, right? But why didn't I do it?
So you're talking about, for example, like if I was recruiting somebody looking for that quality.
Well, I wouldn't say that. When you recruit somebody, then basically, of course, you have to recruit with somebody that you're comfortable with.
Yeah.
Right. So basically, and then
But can you, let's say you recruit somebody with the right attitude who you're comfortable with, but can you train them to be an entrepreneur?
It all depends on whether he wants to be one.
Right, but how do you know that? That's what I want to know.
I say that you have to pick the person that's willing to take the risk.
Yeah, exactly.
But you can't pick the person that's going to look. Even I have to disagree with you on that. You can't pick the person that says, "Oh, I could have done that," because then they're looking at the formula. You have to pick the person that says, I think, I want to do that, but I think I can do it better.
Okay, so how do you identify? Let's say, so back to the point about what makes an entrepreneur, and how do you identify it? Let's say you were in a recruitment situation, and I was sitting across the table from you, and you were the boss making the decision, and you just let's say you were just to look at my CV, my resume. What would be the most indicative factor of that I could take a risk from my resume? What would you be looking for? If you could only just look at my resume and maybe ask me a couple of questions, what would you be looking for?
From your resume, that's going to be because people don't necessarily. I mean, if you've produced your resume,
right? Well, so I'm saying I'm asking you this
your resume because I've got to ask you questions like find out what you did when you had a specific problem. How did you solve that problem?
Right. So are you interested in what's on the resume at all?
Probably reluctantly. I'd have to say, well,
but
it's got you
okay,
here.
so have you recruited people? Have you sat in a job interview and recruited people?
Well, of course.
Yeah. So what if you're looking for people who not necessarily entrepreneurial but fit into a startup situation, what is the one thing that you look for on their resume?
We want. Some things on the resume is actually very important. So you still need the basic knowledge, right? When you're actually doing something, let's say for instance, you're doing engineering work, you actually prefer somebody that actually understands some part of engineering.
Oh yeah,
of course.
He doesn't have to be like paper certified to be an engineer, but then unless of course you're actually looking for compliancy, but he needs to have certain understanding as well as certain competency in that. So you want to look for that. If it's not in the certification, then you have to actually look for two things. One is actually passion. The
where do you see that though?
That's
on a resume.
You can't see it on
all you see on a resume is like I did a BSc in computer engineering, got a 2-1, and then I did a master's. Where's the passion in that?
Yeah, you can't. But what happened is that there are some people that actually add in certain things into their CV that's actually slightly different.
Yeah, so let's talk about that. This is what I'm trying to get to. Yeah. What is that? Because it's sort of off. It's left field in baseball terms, isn't it?
When like some I mean it depends on who you're looking for and who is actually looking for what, right? So basically the person that's going to hire, he will actually look at the resume. Of course he has to actually go like, oh yeah, you know what, this is actually, he's qualified to do this, he's qualified to do that. And but what happened is that I'm actually interested in the summary about himself, or herself. The person needs to actually talk more about themselves.
Right. What are you looking for? What are the telltale signs?
Like initiative. Like for me, I would actually look for like initiative. Whether you are actually you talk about something that you actually try to solve, or talk more about yourself. Right. Right. And then and what makes you different. But unfortunately, of course, that is not possible because what happens, most of the CVs, right, that you actually receive, or most of the resumes that you receive is actually going to talk about their experience. They're going to talk about their education.
And they're polished, right?
Yeah, and then they are not going to actually tell you much about themselves. So they actually want to lure you in maybe out of curiosity, like, you know what, during an interview. So your first interview, you probably just basically ask more, like talk about yourself, talk about an interesting situation, try to solve this problem.
I think that if you're an entrepreneur and you want to find somebody, then you have to go out and look.
Yeah.
You have to. You can't. I think you can say, right, here's the position. Come, and advertise. It's advertised on a board, job board. Whoever wants to come. I think you actually have to go out and look and find out who's available and who's doing what, and talk to people and actually explore the environment that you're in. And once you've done that, then you start to identify potential people that can come and work for you, or you let them know that there's something available that they might be interested. If you're recruiting and you say, okay, right, I'll just put it up on the board and they'll come because they're attracted to it. That's unlikely to happen. You have to go out and say, this is what I'm looking for.
Find that person.
Do you know anyone that can do it? Do you know anyone that would be
you got to hustle.
A possibility?
Yeah, you've got to go and hustle. I mean, it's not what entrepreneurs do. So, can I just share with you my recruitment strategy and then get your opinion on it as two engineers sitting in the room to just pull it apart and let me know what you think and whether or not this is the right. And by the way, if anybody comes to, I'm sure if they take the time to watch this video all the way to the end and watch this part, they'll give away the secrets. But there you go. It's like, they've played the game. Yeah. They've unlocked the next level. So one thing I do is, you mentioned earlier, Aaron, about what is the problem that they solved. I want to test that in the real world situation. So this is what I do in recruitment. And so for those of you watching and those sitting in the room, I'm really curious to hear your feedback on this. What I do is that basically I usually do the recruitment in groups. So I have like 2 or 3 people. Because I'm always curious to see how they interact with other people. You know, I like competitive people, but I don't like competitive people who to the detriment of the team, right? Because there's different types of competition, as we know. So I bring people in, and usually, so I've had this with a group of 4 people, and they sat at a table, and I said to them, "Hey, look, you know, we're doing events here, and we're going to do events downstairs in the event space. I want to go and show you the event space, and this is real. This is happening in the recruitment room, you know, in the meeting room. I want to show it to you. However, you know, I can't get access to the room. The room's locked." And by the way, before this, I prefaced it with the fact that I've said to them, you know, I like people with initiative and all that stuff, right? So they know what I'm looking for. And I said, it's locked. And then they said, okay. And then it's just like silence. Because, you know, they see me as the teacher. And I've got to sort of teach them the knowledge or whatever. And then what happens is the ones who say, you know, who get it will say, well, where's the key? Or how do we get access to it? Or is there any way we can look at it? And that's the initiative in the real world situation, because you can write that down on a CV, but here's the real world panning out. And I say, okay, and they'll ask a series of questions, and then they realize there's a bit of a game going on here, right? It's a real world, like escape game happening, unfolding, but in an interview situation. So then what happens is like they're sitting there and they're saying, okay, so how do we get the key? And then they start getting into it and saying, okay, right, who has access to the key? And I said, well, David might have access to the key. He's the facilities manager. Okay. How do we get in contact with David? And they said, well, David's downstairs. All right. How do we go downstairs? Okay, let's go. And they'll get up and they'll leave the interview room, and like maybe 2 out of the 4 will follow. And the others are looking around like, is this really happening?
Yeah.
Is this really happening? And 2 will go downstairs and they'll look for David, and you'll see it. It's really interesting. Like the ones who are really entrepreneurial will go and ask people. So they go, hey, you know, like, where's David?
Yeah.
And they'll go and find David, and they'll find the key. And I did that with a group of 4, and I did it with like, I think 4 groups of 4. So I interviewed 16 people for the roles in Asia Tech Podcast. And in one group, in 4, 2 people got up and they left. I went and found David. They got the key. They went to the door of the room and they opened it, and they got in, right? And they solved the escape room problem, right? And those 2 got the job. And for me, that instance was the most important thing of doing that. And I was just kind of curious to think, you know, is that too sort of like trite and gamey? But do you think that's sort of, we should use more of those real world problem-solving instances in recruiting?
Here's probably where you probably get into what we call cultural shock and cultural clash. Yeah, I mean, to actually practice that in Asia.
No, I'd have to disagree with that, because I
mean, in China it would be different. I don't believe that China culture is actually so much further from Western culture. I think the initiative the China people actually have is a lot more compared to like Indonesia maybe, or Singapore and
but
Malaysia.
you're looking for entrepreneurs. You're looking for people that are going to be battling.
Yeah, but
out there in the world, you know, they're not just, you know, competing against their neighbors. They're competing against the rest of the world. So that's who you're looking for, and you need to find those people.
Yeah.
And the answer to the question, that if anyone has been listening to this podcast,
we've got listeners,
right?
Yeah.
They'll wait for you to ask the question, and then they'll just lean across and they'll say, here's the key.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. And there you go. Well done to them. Congratulations.
And that's how you'll know that somebody really wants the job.
Yeah, exactly.
But you are in a society that actually wants you to be spoon-fed. You're in a society that actually wants commanders.
But you're looking for entrepreneurs. You're looking for people that are, like I said before, want to battle against the rest of the world.
You've got to want to fight.
Yeah, it's a competition. It's something out there that, okay, we're in our little environment here. It's all safe here. I'll get a job.
Right. Okay. So, all right. We've talked about culture, and we've talked about viewers, and I want to shout out to some of our viewers, who've actually commented. We are actually getting comments.
Oh wow!
On the live stream. So let's give them let's give them a platform. So thank you very much for watching and being part of this show. So let's have a look at who's commented. So firstly, Aditi. Hey Aditi, how's it going? So Aditi worked for us here at Asian Tech Podcast, and she says amazing new microphone. So thanks a lot. Yeah, I think it was worth the investment. And then Eric. So Eric Tanava, good friend of mine, good buddy, and my entrepreneurial brother. He says, apart from the fact the mics look good, he said, so this is the point about the cultural thing that you raised, Aaron. He says that in Indonesia, so he's based in Jakarta.
Oh, nice.
So he is Dutch living in Jakarta, and he's lived in Jakarta. I'm sorry, Eric, I can't remember, but let's say 18 years, 20 years. So he's lived most of his life in Indonesia. He says, in Indonesia, I have recruited great self-starters.
Mm-hmm.
It's not an Asian thing. This is a generalization.
Yes.
I know you mentioned Indonesia and Singapore together. I think maybe Indonesia and Singapore are a little bit different when it comes to that sort of attitude.
Oh, yeah,
right?
yeah.
But I think, Indonesia has more of the hustle because it doesn't have the comfort that Singapore has, right?
It really depends, I guess. It's actually a demographic, right? So basically you have like the middle income group, and then you have the people who are actually like PhD, right? So but I'm not. Yeah, I unfortunately, what I say is very generalized. It's actually more like a stereotyping, I guess. But in if you were to say that you actually find somebody to actually take the initiative to solve a situation, to solve a problem, as an which actually of course will lead to the threats of an entrepreneur, a problem solver, then of course that would be fantastic. It also depends on the opportunity actually to meet one. So it also depends on luck.
Because you have to get out there and
exactly.
So if you like say for instance, if you actually interview like a set of 4, and then you have actually like 4 sets, so 16 people, and then and out of that 4 sets, right, of 16 people, how many people actually went to hunt for the key? Yeah. So that's the question right there. So you actually said that, you want one set of 4, 2 people actually got out there and started looking. Yeah, and then that could be the 2 out of 16. So that's
2 out of 16.
Yeah. So mathematically, that's just 1/8.
And interestingly, I don't want to draw too much from this, but they are from a similar background. They weren't Singaporean Chinese.
Yes, exactly. So I mean, you have a certain set of you need to actually have a certain set of passion. I would say passion. So basically, what happens is you are given a set of problems, and you have to have the curiosity as well as the determination and the passion to solve it. So you hit with an obstacle, and now all of a sudden it comes down to this question: are you going to solve it, or are you going to just sit down there and wait for somebody to give you the command? Right?
I think so. When it comes to recruitment, the only way to know the answer is to actually
see it.
Yeah, in the real world without structure.
Yes.
How are you going to deal with this? And sort of people will look around, won't they, and say, "Oh, what's this guy doing? And what's expected of me?" But the ones that sort of step up and do it, those are the real entrepreneurs.
Oh yeah. Of course. I mean, it doesn't really matter whether you're in Asia, whether you're in like Europe, or like in Americas, or any like any continent or any country. The percentage is almost the same in terms of statistics, right? So basically,
you think so?
Yeah. Well, it's almost
the same. Percentage of what? Like, so the 2 out of the 16 that I talked about.
Yeah, pretty much. It's like
you think so?
I believe so.
I would disagree, but I'm curious to hear your thoughts on that.
I mean, like, how many people actually?
It'll be interesting cultural study, don't you think? Like, we did that experiment in different cultures.
It will be very interesting, because what happened is that you need to actually, first of all, they must actually have the passion. They must have the curiosity.
Right.
They also must have the need to actually feel that they will need to do something more. So they have to be a person that is actually like caring.
Yeah.
This is a problem that you have. I mean, like, I'm locked out of a room. I don't have the key.
Yeah.
Right. So basically, now you actually send out a problem. Now the problem. Now the question is: are they actually able to actually perceive this as a problem? Are they going to actually perceive it as their problem? Are they going to perceive that it is actually something that they actually should make an effort to solve? And there's so many questions to go on.
Okay, nail the colours to the mast here. Is that let's say, taking my 2 out of 16 example, out of 100, what that would be. So times it's about 10 to 15. So 15, if I did 100 interviews of Singaporeans or people in here in Singapore, 10 to 15 would go and get up out of the room, get up off their ass, out of the seat, walk down and find the key, right?
Maybe.
Yeah, 10 to 15.
Yeah.
You're hypothesizing that would be the same pretty much in every country.
Almost every country, because otherwise, it's like the same thing as saying business.
Come on, Neville. It's China. What do you think with your experience of 18 years in China?
I would think, I would agree it would be about the same. But the thing is, we're giving the answer.
Yeah.
We're actually giving the answer out now.
Oh, so
what would happen?
So don't watch this bit.
Yeah, everyone would stand up and go out and find the key because you've given them the answer, which is what a lot of people want. A lot of people want the answer to the question.
Yes.
But as I said before, the person that actually has listened to this to the end is the person that would say, once you've asked the question, would say, oh, by the way, here's the key.
Oh, yeah.
And that would be the person that's stepped up.
Right. But that's a mark of the kind of person you want in your team, though, isn't it? Because they put the effort in to listen to this podcast.
Yeah. So wherever the sort of the norm is, you're looking for the person or the people that are going above and beyond.
Yes,
the ones and if the answer is, okay, when Graham asked me about the key, I'll get up, then, the 4 out of 4, 16 out of 16, 100 out of 100 will get up. But then you're looking for the 2 or the 1 that will say, oh, Graham, about that question, here's the key.
Yeah, right.
And they've already.
But that's what you want. If you're recruiting in a startup, absolutely, that's what you want. Oh, by the way, we've got comments coming in now. So now that we've invited them, now here's the thing: is that when we went live with The Grind, I wasn't expecting anybody to be watching it because it was a bit of an experiment. We weren't even announcing it, but we have comments coming in. It's great. I love the fact that we can share this conversation and people can be part of this conversation. And here goes, Eric. So Eric says that don't forget that the best recruiting is not cold recruiting, but recruiting through recommendations. When you're looking around for leads, initiative and self-starting should be a prerequisite.
Yeah, but if you're going to somebody's recommendation and then basically without any validation would be nepotism, isn't it?
Right. Well, yeah, maybe. But how do you do that through recommend? I've never done recruitment through recommendation.
Well, it depends on the relationship with your community, because if you're like, we're in the podcasting area, right? Or we're in whatever we're in, and I say, oh, by the way, I know such and such, they're interested in podcasting. I've worked with them before. I think you should talk to them. Right. That's a recommendation. Mm-hmm. It's also if I had somebody working for me and I knew that they'd outgrown what I could provide. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I know that you're looking for somebody. I said, look, I've got this person working for me. I don't have anything for them to grow into. Are you interested?
Right. Okay.
So that they then, and it's a
it's a recommendation.
It's about
Aaron, have you ever recruited through recommendation? Or have you just been job ads? That's how I've done it. Yeah, well, I've never even considered recommendation. That's terrible.
Well, recommendation is actually very important. Like somebody actually is willing to actually endorse a person based on his expertise and his experience. Then basically, of course, that's a very powerful tool. But to actually blindly just accept is pure based on nepotism.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. It's about your relationship with your community of like-minded entrepreneurs or people, because you've got to go out there. You can't. I mean, I see a lot on some entrepreneurs. I won't say a lot, but they're isolated on their project. Mm-hmm. They're not aware of what's going on in the wider community because, they're working on their project. It's a secret. It's gonna revolutionize whatever. Mm-hmm. But they're not interacting with other people.
Oh yeah.
So they don't know who's available because they say, oh, I need people. I can't find people. I'm looking for people. I need this. I need that. Mm-hmm, but they're not talking to other entrepreneurs in different areas.
You want somebody like, I mean, like, say for instance, you're a really small startup. You're trying to actually find say for instance, a founders team, right?
Right.
So example, and then you're trying to recruit the original team. Then of course it actually becomes to, you don't have the resources to waste, right? And then you have to actually make sure that everybody actually has to contribute a certain amount of expectation. So it becomes a very number crunching game, unfortunately. So you want people with initiative, with a certain amount of passion. And when somebody actually recommends to you, right, he actually bypasses a lot of rules, a lot of obstacles. But so you still need to actually go through the most important test, I guess, is synergy. You have to go through whether you're actually able to work with the recommended person.
Right. But don't you think, I mean, here's the thing, is that recommending is like another pair of eyes or another filter for the recruitment process. And so I'm recruiting now, and I'm always looking for people who are entrepreneurial. So I always ask, I mean, this is the point of today's conversation, is like, how do you identify an entrepreneur? Can you teach it? Can you take somebody with raw talent? Can you make them into an entrepreneur? So if you take a recommendation, what you've effectively done is you've brought in another entrepreneur, obviously.
Yes.
And they've kind of filtered that out for you and given you a second opinion. I've just noticed Eric says, and I want to bring in Eric because he's joining the conversation. So thanks, Eric. He says that all my best staff have always come from friends of high performers in my company.
Yes, but now that's the catch. If you are in, let's say for instance, if you're in the field, right, that is actually similar. So the people who actually you're actually in your network, right, is actually in a similar field or close enough field that when they recommend, right, and then what happens is that it actually, you actually can relate. It relates to your field.
Yeah.
Now, but when you actually say, for instance, in my situation, you are actually, say for instance, you're actually doing a consumer electronics security, then all of a sudden, like, there's nothing here.
Right, so there isn't a field. There isn't a recommendation.
Yeah, so all of a sudden, the other people can recommend 1,001 people. I mean, there's 1,001 people that can actually recommend to you. But the problem is, their skills, their expertise, as well as the passion, are they similar to yours? Especially when you are in a new field.
Yeah. All right, well, let me turn it over. I mean, for example, Neville, with yourself, obviously, you are educating, you're training, you're teaching the next generation of talent coming out of Singapore. When you look at those, can you identify, and I'm not talking about your current cohort, but can you identify who is a potential entrepreneur?
I can see the sort of seeds settling in.
And what are those seeds? What are the telltale signs?
There are curiosity. There's like an expression of questioning. What am I doing?
Yeah.
Could I do that? Because they're still quite young. Can I do? And
so what age are they? What age are they?
They're university age, up to 27.
Up to 27?
Yeah.
What 27-year-olds still doing at university? Are they graduate? Are they mature students?
You get mature students. There's national service.
National service.
And there's some international students.
Yeah.
And it's like, I also think that it's a good idea to actually go to university later on, after you've worked, after you've understood some of the issues.
Yep, agreed.
Some of the things you like, some of the things you don't like, what might be your passion. Because then when you actually go to study, you're actually studying something you're interested in.
Yeah, you've got something to relate it to. Yeah.
And
so let's go back to the question: is how do you identify of the 20 students? Let's say you had 20 students in a group. How many of them will become entrepreneurs? How many, given that you're teaching entrepreneurship, in a way, how many of them will actually go and start successful companies?
Straight out of university, very few.
Was very few out of 20.
Probably half. One.
One?
Yeah, because it's
half or one. That's like 10 or one. What?
Yeah, it's like it's
really subjective.
I wouldn't say that somebody can go straight out of university to a startup, because you need to work. You need to have some experience of of life, what you like. You also need experience of how to work with people. And I think that's probably one of the most important things. You need to know how to work with people, how to motivate people, what demotivates people.
And you need to know what's broken.
Yeah.
Well, here's a very interesting thing. You just said this, okay? You know what? You actually you think that sometimes it's actually better for somebody to actually go to work first, become more experienced before they go back to university. So it comes back down to the same question again for him. Now what happened is they have never worked before. They have just graduated from university. Do you prefer them to actually work first, and then after that become?
For me, I would say get a job.
Yeah, exactly. So it's an accumulation of skills and an accumulation of experiences.
Yeah.
So
why bother even go to university ever?
Well, the thing is that it really depends. Again, it really depends.
Sorry, Neville, mate. Sorry, I know you're. Well, I don't. That's actually the point. I mean, unless you're teaching like a very technical skill.
I mean, I have a very. I mean, it's not so private joke, but I like to joke about it with my close friends. So basically, what happened is I would actually say this. A in school. Well, you know what? When you actually do mathematics in university, mathematics in junior college or polytechnic, and then basically you get like an A star. In school, but then when you actually come out in real life, all of a sudden your mathematics skills actually become an F.
Yeah,
and
I can attest to that. Yeah. I remember. So here's the thing, right? I remember at school, and this goes back to the entrepreneurship thing. Is that so? At school, I went to a boys' school, a private school, and much to my hatred, I was forced to go to it, and I didn't like it. I didn't enjoy it at all. And it was like it probably turned me into more of a rebel than anything. But I went to the school, very traditional. It's like Hogwarts. And I went there, all that stuff, dressed up in uniform. And in my school, I remember, hopefully they're not watching, but they were like, let's say there's 3 kids, right? And AJ and AP and GB. GB's me, right? GB's me. I was that guy that did, I got the B+. Right, because I was off down the castle on the seafront and smoking with my mates because I realised actually that was a lot better than getting an A in maths because A in maths made no difference really to my life. I worked that out. So, and then there was AJ, and he was super smart. He was 1 year younger than us because he was so smart that he got bumped up a year. And he's back in the 80s. So can you imagine like the mid 80s? Both your parents worked for IBM, right? So these were like, super intellectual family. Both your parents working for IBM, which were like, IBM back in the 80s was like Apple today, right? Imagine if both your parents worked at Apple. So he was like super smart. He was so smart that he moved up a year. He was like A in everything. He was number 1 in everything.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Super smart. And then obviously he graduated. And then there was this other guy, AP. And he was a friend of mine. And so here's the thing: if you, and maybe you understand about this, Neville, is that if you live in England, there's a thing about being ginger.
Yeah.
If you're ginger, you get the shit kicked out of you. You get bullied, right? It's just I don't know. If you're red-haired, you get bullied. I don't know what the deal is, but unfortunately, if you get born ginger, it toughens you up, right? He was like an E student, right? So let's compare them. A, E. When they graduated, AJ, A student, IBM kid, went on and he worked for PA Consulting and he worked for all those consulting companies. And that's all he ever did. He just worked for consulting companies as a consultant. AP, when he graduated, he went and worked and he hustled. They did all this different stuff and then worked for Merrill Lynch. And then became a broker for Merrill Lynch, was like, the sales side of things, all hustling sales and stuff like that. He was like pretty damn good at it because he didn't give a fuck. See, AJ all cared about getting exams and doing the test, but AP, he didn't give a fuck. He just wanted the money. He wanted to hustle. Yeah. That's what he cared about because at school, he'd been kicked, bullied. And I remember when, like one time when I walked in lunchtime and I walked in and the big rugby kid was beating this kid. He was punching him. He had him in a headlock and he was punching him like this. So that was what AP grew up with, the ginger kid grew up with, right? So how do we get onto this? But anyway, I want to talk about how these people are like changed through university and how like after university, you talked about the bright kids, what happens to them afterwards. It's like the bright kid just became this, they went into a world where they could only ever perform if they had a track to run on. But the other kids, the smart ones, not the ones who sort of spiraled down into the world of sort of like, not criminality, but the dark side. But those that were smart, who didn't get on the system, they were the grafters. They became the entrepreneurs because they said like, fuck this. The system's not working for me. I'm going to go out and do something different. And they were the ones who became more successful over time.
I think that's a misconception over here. It's not about like, going to school and scoring A's in mathematics and then after graduating and then after that having an F in math, right? In real life, it's actually, it's nothing to do with like, they were really academically strong and then they are really bad in real life. That is nothing to do with that. It's the perception of what they call it, relevancy. So when you go to school, and then the only thing that you actually believe in, because the intent to actually go to school, the mission, the goal, is to actually score well, so that you actually graduate and then you graduate as a top student. But when you actually graduated, when you actually completed your university degree or you completed your school, now what happens is that you feel that there's actually no need, because what happens, I'm only learning it because I just need to actually pass an exam. Yeah. But when it comes down to real life, every day is an exam. Then you don't realize it. You don't realize it that every day is a test, because every day is actually a different situation. Sometimes it's a very difficult test. Sometimes it's a very simple test. So that's what the personal private joke actually meant. So you're really good in school. You are really calculative. You can actually calculate everything when it is actually given to you in a step-by-step guide. And the question is actually that leads you to an answer. But when it actually comes down to life, there's no real answer. There's no real answer.
Yeah, exactly.
There's no leading.
Yeah, that's the difference, right?
Yeah.
That's the difference with real entrepreneurship. I guess what we come down to, and bringing it back full circle, tonight's conversation is that, that's why like travel,
yes,
I think is the real... The strongest parallel to entrepreneurship is like when you go and live in a different country, there is no real answer.
No.
Everything's different.
Yes.
Especially if you don't speak the language.
Exactly. That's what it's about, right?
Yeah.
It's, that's what it's about.
Yeah.
It's like you don't have that rule book that you can play from.
Yes.
How do you deal with that? What do you do? Do you step up and solve it? Do you ask for help? Do you ask for directions and so on? That's the real challenge.
But I think that was it AP? Which one?
Which one we're talking about? AP was the junior.
Yeah.
He's learning lessons. He's learning lessons that I don't want to get. I know I'm going to get beaten.
Yeah.
But I don't want to get beaten too much, so that I can still get on with what I need to get on. There's still lessons being learned there, whereas the academic one that's having going through the thing. The lessons they're learning is that everything's going to be okay. Yeah. Everything's going to be...
You follow the rules.
Yeah, you follow the rules, everything's going to be okay. The other guy's learning, well, even if I follow the rules, I'm going to get beaten.
Yeah.
So I need to create rules of my own. I need to adapt. I need to learn on the fly.
Oh, yeah.
And when you're, I'll say, academically... successful and you flow along and everything goes and you're able to study in the right environment and everything is going well, you never get into a situation when things go wrong. So the first time you meet, things go wrong, what do I do?
That's absolutely it.
What do I do now?
When the wheels fall off.
Yeah.
When you get out of, whether you get out of school and suddenly it's not like everything at school, it's not all tests, or you go to a new country and the wheels fall off. How the hell do you cope with that?
Yeah. There's this person I actually know, right? So what happened is, he did, of course, he did everything by the rules. So what happened is that, he went to school, of course, he actually tried to score really hard. He got good scores, not the best, but still good enough. He graduated university with engineering degree, triple E.
This is not you, is it?
No, that's not me. no, but somebody I know. So what happened is that he actually graduated with triple E at that time. Now it's actually called computer engineering. Before it's actually called electronics and electrical engineering. He graduated, and then of course everybody was actually like really oh, he's going to go places. Now all of a sudden comes down to he has this strange attachment to marketing and sales. So he actually likes to do business. He likes to do sales. Yeah, and it's like totally different from engineering, but he likes to do sales. So he did the MLM thing. He tried to do the salesman thing. Then after that, he went to the insurance, and then property agent, and then after they went to become a banker.
Wow.
Yeah. So he was actually working in banks, and
what's he doing now?
He got retrenched.
What does that mean?
He got kicked out. So one day, you know what, they actually had a change of policy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, a person who actually follows rules all his life, and then all of a sudden he's actually at the mercy of somebody else's creating the rules.
Yeah, but so he's followed all those rules. He's been retrenched. So what's he doing now? What's his attitude?
Nothing. He just gave up.
He just gave up.
Yeah, I'm serious. He just gave up. He does odd jobs.
Yeah.
He does freelance work. Nothing that actually earns him significant amount of money, but enough to actually go by.
Yeah.
But that happens later in life, doesn't it?
Yeah, and that's the worst thing, you know. Yeah. This is one of the worst things that you can actually have, to actually be greeted at the age of 40 with retrenchment and then doing freelance jobs.
Yeah, exactly. Because doesn't that go back to that part and what really defines an entrepreneur, not in terms of academically defining them, but what they are in spirit, is the people who can deal with the shit that life throws at them. And, you know, like, so if you've always been successful, you've never had to deal with adversity. You've always just followed the rules. You've done that. You've worked hard, but it's not adversity. You've never had to deal with a curveball or where the rules have completely changed or where you're outside of your comfort zone. And that goes fine until you get to 40, and then beyond 40, suddenly something happens. And like you say, somebody gets retrenched and then you're fucked.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's the challenge, isn't it? Is that, you know, they have a what's the word I'm looking at? A skill set.
Yes.
To get them to a certain stage and through a certain phase in their life. But when you change all of that,
you change the rules, and then all of a sudden you become not relevant anymore, and then basically you.
But isn't that irrelevancy to do with? I mean, I would say it's to do with their perception of themselves, because he must have skills. I mean, he's been an engineer, he's been a banker, he's been so many things.
Yes.
And he has experience. So shouldn't he then be able to sit down and say...
Yeah, but the mindset that he has always been actually following what other people tell him.
Right.
Yeah, and then he always believed that, you know what, that things actually... When you follow what other people instruct you, especially a superior, like your boss, your employer, or your supervisor or your manager, actually tells you to do, and then basically you can do no wrong as long as you excel in it. Then what happens is one day it comes down to something that actually beyond the person that is actually giving you the instruction.
Exactly, beyond your control.
Yeah. And I agree with you there. And that's where, that's in a way the failing of many educational systems, not just here in Singapore, but across the world,
everywhere.
that they don't allow.
That's why you can't teach it, man. You can't. Well, here's the thing. That's why I think you know, like, how do you teach that?
You don't teach it.
So, well, here's my theory, and shoot me down. Is that's why I think that the way you teach it is like, you know, a kid says they don't want to go to university, you say, like, here's the money, go and travel the world. Because, you know, if my son went to Thailand or South America or Canada or UK or wherever it is, he's going to encounter things which are beyond his control, where he, you know, the fact that he knows all these things, you know, and the fact that he has like 1,000 subscribers on YouTube doesn't mean a shit.
Yeah.
You know, he's trying to speak to a guy so he could communicate to this guy to buy food, to eat for that day. But if he can't do that, then he's going to starve to death.
I'd ask you one question. Why give him half the money? Why not just say to him, good luck.
Have fun. Right? Good luck, have fun. Yeah.
No, good luck. I'm behind you.
Right.
Give me a call if you have any serious problems.
Right.
Here's the money for a ticket to wherever you want to go,
Ulaanbaatar.
sort it out.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Sort it out.
And
But that's a bit harsh, isn't it?
no, but people do that, and people do sort it out.
Right.
They
yeah,
find
well,
jobs.
yeah.
They
Right.
find jobs. They do it, and then they come back and they say, "Thank you, Dad." Right?
Thank you for teaching me.
I'm ready.
I'm ready to do it.
I'm
yeah.
ready to, to.
All right, I get it.
Yeah.
I'm too nice.
Yeah,
Well,
but you know,
I'm
like,
not saying you're
like
too nice, but I'm just saying that when you
Well,
say,
how do you say I
teach
should
it?
do it? Like, rather than say here's half the money, say here's nothing.
Well,
Thanks for not going. Thanks for not going to university. That's all the money that you're going to spend
just
at
say-
university. I'm
no,
going to
just
pocket
say,
that.
go
Here's a single
Learn
ticket.
what
To,
you
yeah.
need to learn. Here's the money for university.
yeah. No,
When
I'm
you-
not sending him to university.
When you come back,
yeah, you still have that
whatever
money.
you want to do with it,
Yeah.
you can do it.
What do you
And-
mean?
Well, if he decides that he wants to open a business
Yeah,
or
yeah.
create a business somewhere, but he has got that experience.
Yeah.
He's learned the ups and downs.
Yeah.
Because I mean, my nephews and my niece. I don't know if my brother's going to be listening to this. I mean, he's going to find out for the first time.
Oh no!
she-
Wait! Just be careful. Just be careful. What are you going to say? Just wait.
She quit her job. She had a really
Right.
good job. She quit her job and she went traveling around South America.
Yeah.
And she's learned a lot from it.
Yeah.
She's learned a lot. And with that, she's now, she's returned back to the UK.
Yeah.
And that experience she's got with her. She didn't.
Yeah. Exactly. That's what I think. That's
Yeah.
what I'm on board with that.
You see, when you're gonna actually tell him that, you know what, you go travel the world, learn something on your own, right? You're not gonna actually go like, yeah, you know what, I'm going to actually have an incentive for you to stay here. I'm going to
Right.
have like a remainder sum of money over here if
Yeah.
you want to go to university. No, you just basically just go like, yeah, you know what, I'm going to actually do the Japanese thing, right? You know,
What's
like
that?
the Asian culture. I'm going to be a lion. I'm going to be like a tiger. I'm going to push you off the cliff. If you climb up, you survive, and then that's it. So sometimes you just have. It's. I mean, as a parent, I guess. If you're a parent, I guess sometimes the most difficult thing to do
Right.
is to actually just let go, let them figure out a way. Yeah. So I'm actually experiencing from a family that's actually really traditional, really harsh. So it's my way or the wrong way, right? Type of deal, and I'm going to actually pit you against your siblings, and then so that you can actually fight among yourselves, so you can compare who has a. Who actually has a better accomplishment with each other, and then and all the sibling rivalry and stuff. And then basically what happens when you see your brother, you go like, oh, you are my, like destined competitor and stuff like that. And then it's not.
That's a
gonna
bit
work
like you know when you see those sort of like nature programs where they have like the eagle and they have the two babies in the nest and two babies are born and then one eats the other.
But
That's pretty harsh, right?
Yeah,
That's not the kind of competition that we want to encourage here.
Yeah, but the extreme polarity over here in my family is actually really big, because what happened is that, you know what, here is a parachute, there is the cliff, and
There's nothing in between.
Yeah, and then there's nothing in between. So basically, what happened is it becomes a very weird. It doesn't really actually equip you with the real life. It doesn't actually really teach you. It's actually like, you know what, you listen to me, you have a parachute. You don't listen to me, there's a cliff right there.
Right.
Die.
Yeah, and then
That's interesting. That's
not die.
Did you say that's an Asian thing?
No, it's my family thing. This is not an Asian thing. This is my family.
So what happened? You jump off the cliff?
You
Well,
listen to
you have a
if
choice.
I'm the father, right?
Yeah.
You listen to me, you get a parachute.
Yeah.
If you don't listen to me, you don't follow my way.
Right. So what does that mean
But
for
then
being an
you're
entrepreneur?
gonna die.
Huh?
You're dying.
Yeah, not die, but then what happens is that's the cliff. Then you go find your own way.
Ah.
So it becomes very adversarial, and then basically what happens is if you want to actually take the parachute, and it goes like, yeah, you know what, I only have one. There's three of you. Good luck.
Right.
And then all of a sudden it becomes like some sort of sibling rivalry, and that's I think is actually the best way to actually describe my family when I grew up.
Same here.
Yeah, so it is not really helpful because the contrast is actually too great, and then what happened is that there's no real way of actually equipping you, and then they go like, yeah, you know what, I provide you with everything, education, money, and for the beginning part.
But then again, it's their version of education.
Yes,
there are many versions of education.
Yeah, but
agree.
when the ultimate intent is either you listen to me, you get something. You don't listen to me, you get nothing.
That's like a dictatorship.
Yeah, exactly.
That's like you're being forced to do what I want you to. That's
and that's not learning. That's actually basically preconditioning. Yeah. So I mean, and of course, I'm sorry, but a lot of families, not just Asian, a lot of families are like that. Yeah.
I think it's global. It's not an Asian thing at all. It's not your
Asian.
family. It's all of us.
Yeah.
Right?
So it is a thing like that. So, but then when you actually do it like this, right? Then how many people is actually going to take the cliff?
I would.
Yeah.
I took the cliff.
Yeah, exactly. So and then
Did you take the cliff?
Well, we are all sitting on the same table. What do you think? Right? You get it?
That's it, man. That we took the cliff. Cheers to that.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, clink to that. All right, man. Well, listen, we've done 2 hours tonight. 2 hours.
But before we finish,
all right, go on then.
I have one last thing to say about the competition thing. I wanted to say this, but I don't have the opportunity, so I'm going to cut you short before you end it. So competition, I don't believe that you have to actually be adversarial to everybody that is actually in the same business. So you don't want to make an enemy in terms of business. But what happens is competition actually leads to, if you actually treat healthy competition, it actually leads to self-improvement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
so
we're on board with that.
Yeah. So when you actually set a bar, and then you just want to actually you don't want to compete to win. You want to compete in such a way that you know what, you can actually better yourself.
Yeah, totally. No, we're on board. Look, me and Neville, I'm sure get this. I fucking love competing. Like if we go down to the table tennis table, like neither you or I are table tennis professionals.
I am.
There's a table tennis.
In my mind, I'm a table tennis professional, and I will beat you.
Beat my ass. I fucking love getting on the table tennis play and playing against somebody, even though I'm not a professional. And I just love competing against that person. I want to beat their ass. I want to kick their ass. I want to destroy them. But at the end of it, I feel close to that person. I feel like, we really like. I'm enjoying. I'm not like, if you beat me and you like do a really good move and like you do a smash and like curve the ball,
there'll be lots of those good smashes.
Yeah, well, maybe not with you, but I love that. I love it if you come back hard and you beat me. And so I think competition. There's definitely 2 types of competition. There's like a really positive competition where you both are like jamming again. Just like if you were to play a game with somebody and you'd be in the team and you're like kind of like driving each other on. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but the game actually is very adversarial. It's either I win or you lose,
right?
and you lose, or you win and I lose.
But you still play in a team, right?
Well, in the team, yes. But
but there's still competition within the team, right?
No. It's not supposed to. This is the funny thing. This is the funny thing. I mean, there's a lot of competition when I was in an American guild.
Right.
So there was everybody was actually competing to actually be the best in.
Okay, but maybe it's the structure of the guild and the team, right? But maybe I think. I think back to, like the team that I have in business and like, even just playing table tennis, silly things like that. Yeah. Even play against my wife. Like if I play table tennis against my wife, I want to kick her ass.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, I want to beat her. But I just love the fact that if I'm kicking their ass and they come back like harder and they kick my ass, I love that. Yeah. I love that because it makes me raise my game. Yeah. So I love that sort of competitive edge. I feel like it's definitely a positive thing. It's definitely something in my spirit, entrepreneurialism. I think you have to have that.
I'm going to do something really shameless because what happened is my girlfriend actually said this about me. She goes like, you know what? I always like to say it is easy. I use it as a motivation. Yeah. So I'm going to tell you, you know what, this is not a difficult task if you actually break it into small little pieces and then it becomes very simple. And then and I always tell them is, you know what, it's easy. It's just a matter whether you're actually interested to actually figure it out. And one day she actually got really pissed with me.
Oh, well, by the way, we're live, so hopefully you're happy sharing this.
Yeah, I hope she's actually watching. Well, it's an apology. So
here we go. All right then.
So she actually go like, yeah, you know what? I really hate it when you actually say it's easy because it's easy for you, but it's not easy for me. Yeah. So I go like, yeah, you know what? I don't mean it in such a way that I'm actually trying to belittle you. I'm trying to actually mean it in such a way that, you know what? If you actually pay if you have actually interest in it, and then you actually want to actually pay the amount of effort to it, and then basically it actually comes to you naturally. Yeah, that's what I meant.
So you're talking about knowledge of it is easy.
Yeah.
Actually doing it is still hard.
Well, no, not really. Like, I mean, like that in that context was actually pretty different. So actually, like, what happened is recently because you know what, I got a little bit more free time, and then I got this money to actually spend. So I actually decided, you know what, I'm gonna actually splurge a little, and I'm gonna buy myself a nice.
What did you buy?
Computer.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm actually going like, I'm gonna build this. I have this OCD about computers. I don't like it when then it's actually pre-built by somebody else.
Pre-built.
Yeah, like I don't want to buy like Acer, Dell, or like Alienware.
Okay, yeah.
I have to build it myself because I
Okay.
don't trust anybody else with it.
Oh, so you go out, you buy the screws.
Yeah.
I will buy the parts and
You
then
buy the motherboard.
He's
Yeah.
an engineer, man. It's like
Yeah,
you
yeah,
talk
yeah,
engineer talking to engineer. Surely you get it.
Yeah, and of course I'm gonna actually say this: if you're gonna actually buy a computer, make sure you buy the operating system as well. Because what happens is this is the really stupid thing to do. Actually,
Right.
if you're gonna pirate Windows,
We're live here, man.
I'm sorry,
Are
if
you
you're gonna
happy to-
pirate an operating system, right,
Yeah.
and then you're gonna use that same operating system to actually access your bank accounts, you're gonna access your
Yeah.
investments, and then you don't really realize what
Oh,
the-
what malware is on it. And
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
can package anything inside
Yeah,
there, and then
yeah.
you don't realize
Yeah.
it. And then you go like, yeah, you know what? It's free. I'm going to use it.
So why didn't you? I mean, why didn't you buy? I mean, I know they don't do the
Yeah.
the Microsoft
well,
CDs anymore, but
Yeah.
why don't you
CDs.
get online and download the?
yeah, but you have to buy it first. So always make sure you buy an original Windows.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you're going to use Windows, buy the original Windows. If you're going
Yeah.
to use Linux, at least say thank you for
Oh
actually-
gosh, Linux. I
Yeah,
mean, that's gonna give me
or
a
something,
headache.
whatever. So actually, just
Linux
make
headache.
sure you actually pay the dues. you actually show the appreciation
Just
for
buy
it.
a Mac.
All right, show
Yeah.
your appreciation.
Yeah,
just
yeah,
buy a
show
Mac.
appreciation.
All right,
Buy
okay.
a Mac.
Buy a Mac.
Yeah.
Oh,
So,
no.
anyway,
You
about the
know,
computer.
Like we don't have another 2 hours to talk about Mac versus
No,
Windows.
no. But about the computer is very simple. It's just basically like, you know what? I go like, yeah, I'm going to build myself one. And then I actually went to her family member, one of the brother-in-law actually was like going, yeah, that's very interesting. And I go like, yeah, but then it's very easy. All you have to do is just basically do it step by step. And then what happened is that, so I think my girlfriend wasn't very happy about it because, you know, I made it sound so
she
easy.
might be watching.
Yeah, well, that's the idea.
You're cool with that?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the whole idea.
Is it a confession?
Yeah, it is a confession. it is. So,
All right, okay, listen, we're gonna have to wrap up. So,
Oh,
is
okay.
it parting comments?
2 seconds.
2 seconds. Like, you got to get it off your chest. I know, Aaron, you've been like you want to share this. So, what is it you want to say?
I'm sorry. I don't mean it as an insult. I'm not saying that I'm actually better or I'm actually smart. I'm just meaning it that, you know what, if you actually pay some interest
Yeah.
and then you're actually willing to actually experience it, then basically you can
Yeah.
learn how to do it.
It is hard, isn't it, as an entrepreneur?
It is.
It is because you kind of. I find this is that I have really high standards
Oh, yeah.
and
yeah.
expectations.
Yeah.
You know, I do Ironman triathlon, so I expect everybody to be an Ironman triathlete.
Yes.
And when they're not, I get disappointed.
Yeah.
It's hard, but I'm learning.
It's the same thing. I take it for granted that, you know what, after a certain amount of skills and knowledge and experience with it,
Yeah.
with certain things, I take it for granted that everybody I actually meet is actually has the same knowledge.
Exactly.
Yeah, and
Well,
then and
But
so.
here's the thing as well. I mean, let's sort of wrap up because we've done 2 hours and 6
Oh,
minutes.
I'm so sorry.
No, not sorry at all. It's been amazing. Is that, you know, what I think is that we live in a world where we're constantly surrounded by people like us. So what we think is normal,
It's not.
so it becomes normal, right? But what we do, you know, if you go into the normal world, to be, you know, most people, let's think about it, most people, normal people, have normal jobs. And we are a small percentage of the world of people who've stepped outside of that and gone and started businesses and gone and taken a risk, gone and left countries.
Oh, yeah.
You know, whether you've left the country or started a business, you're like 1%, 1% of that population, right? However, if you were to sit in this room today, and this is the point of the grind, I suppose, is that you sit around with people who, like-minded people who've also done these amazing things with their lives. And then that becomes normal, and you forget about how amazing that really is.
Yeah, and we treat it as it's something that we breathe in and do naturally.
Right.
So we forget that the amount of knowledge and the amount of experience that we actually learn is actually over a long period of time, actually.
Yeah.
If you actually think back logically. it's
Right,
like a
and
long
it just
period,
becomes
yeah.
something normal because it becomes
Yeah.
like, you know, like where you're sort of measuring your waistline and you put you can never sort of look in the mirror and think, oh, I've put on like 5 pounds or 5 kilos. You don't see it, do you? Because it's
Yeah.
always there.
Yeah.
And it's similarly, like, you surround yourself with people who do these amazing things.
Yeah.
Like, you've lived in Canada for what, 17 years?
Yes. Yes.
And you lived in China for
14.
Oh, yeah.
14 years, right? And like, I mean, Eric, who's sort of taking part in the conversation tonight, lived in Indonesia for 21 years. This is fucking amazing.
Yeah, it is.
It is. I mean, how many people out there do these things and take these kind of risks? And it's like, I think that's why you need to, we rather than you, we need to be very conscious about the people we hang around with and surround yourself with people who are equally amazing. I know, not want to blow smoke up our own ass, but you know what I mean? You can easily surround yourself with people who aren't like that. And, you know, then you think, oh, what am I doing with my life, right? But, you know, you surround yourself with people like that, that's fucking amazing. That's what it's about. You know, as Jim Rohn says, I suppose this is sort of the parting comment. Jim Rohn is the guy who influenced Tony Robbins. You know who Tony Robbins is?
Yeah.
Yes.
So Tony Robbins is the man. He's the dude. He's like, you know, the Mr. Motivator. But Jim Rohn was the one who taught Tony Robbins. And Jim Rohn says, like, you are the sum of the 5 people you hang around with on a daily basis.
Yeah.
I totally believe that. So today, to sit with you two guys, you're half of those 5 people. And I think that's amazing. For me, it's like a real privilege. And that's what it's about. You know, that's what being an entrepreneur is about, is creating that sort of a social network that you can sort of plug into.
And that's the thing that I think you don't teach, but it's an attitude. Who do you want to be with?
Yeah.
You know, who do you want to hang around with? Who do you want to spar with?
Spar.
Yeah.
Whether it's on games or volleyball or table tennis table. Yeah, man. Let's do it. All right. So this has been the grind. Grind number 1. Well, it's not really grind number 1. It's the first public one that we've done. Hopefully you've enjoyed this podcast. If you've made it to the end, I'd love to hear. We would love. So myself, Aaron, and Neville would love to hear your thoughts and your comments on this podcast. So drop them in. We talked about a lot of things, but the key theme tonight was all about entrepreneurship. Can you teach entrepreneurship? You know, what is entrepreneurship? And, you know, really war stories from the front line. I'm very hungry. I've gone all... I think, what are our thoughts on food, guys? Have you eaten? Have you had dinner?
No.
No? Do you have an idea of what we're going to do for dinner now?
I think we'll have to discuss it off air.
Off air. All right, then. Let's do it. Well, Singapore's a great place to do that. Let's do that.
Yeah.
So thank you very much, folks. If you've been watching, thank you for your participation. Love your thumbs up. Love your comments. And we will be back every week on Thursday for more insights into the world of entrepreneurship. My name's Graham Brown.